letter is it that depicts the two-flame stage, the first real creative stage? Precisely what the thesis calls for, the first letter, Aleph, composed of two yods, one above the other below, the central axis, a slightly variant form of our mathematical sign of division, a horizontal line with a dot above and one below it. All life is an interplay between the upper fire of spirit and the lower fires of sense and the flesh, of pure fire in the air and impure fire in water. Even the English A carries the same depiction, as it presents the one vertical line of spirit raying downward, the I as being split apart into duality, with the two separated lines still connected by the horizontal bar of mutual interrelation. The resulting Hebrew word, then, for fire is just what the specifications of symbolic representation demand. The word should be composed of symbolic letters carrying the idea of the one fire, the dual fire and the triple fire signs, and this is precisely what the Hebrew word for fire is. It is esh, really aksh, composed of aleph subvoweled by e and shin. Aleph is the dual letter, shin the triple, and the middle bar between the two yods is the aleph in the single bar fire. Then significantly, man who embodies this single, double, and triple fire is ish. One would ask at once whether the English word ash would carry the same connotations, being the visible end result of fire. It is extremely likely that it does. Not only is it at once evident in its relation to fire as its residue, ashes, but the Norse mythology depicting the radiating streams of the living fire under the imagery of a branching tree shows the ash as the tree type of the fire emanation, the ash tree of life. It has already been stated that the patriarchal character designed as Abram, personified in the Hebrew formation, the first father of spiritual life emanating out of the primordial essence of fire, you are of the Chasdim. The latter word signifies not national Chaldeans, as those thus designated were not an ethnic group but a spiritual caste. The term stands for the first archangels or creative fires, the seven. To be the father of spiritual life in an evolutionary cycle, this ray had to be the first aspect of the emanation. Therefore, it would be found to be composed of the first two letters of the alphabet. This is precisely what is found in the Hebrew word for father, A-B, linking it with the Egyptian Ra, R-A. The radiant solar deity, we have A-B, Ra-M, Abram, receiving later in its evolution the developed powers of godhood, represented by the fifth Hebrew letter H-E and S, and so becoming Abraham and Abraham. And as Abram came out of the primordial imperial fire, you are, it is hardly coincidental that even you are, begins with that letter U, which with V represents the downward line of descent, the turning upward and the return to the heights. The detailed knowledge is not at present available to trace the chain of linked steps in the descent of the divine flame from A down to M. It does not seem apparent that at any rate in extant alphabets there is to be found a sequence of letter significations paralleling and depicting the successive stages of the creative fire's descent into the water, or matter involvement. If such an explicit arrangement was planned for the first alphabets, it seems impossible to trace the stages in orderly succession in present alphabets, but what emerges with astonishing certitude is that the central letters M and N carry the significance of what the diagram demands, water. Thus, this at the point of lowest descent, where our thesis requires water, there indeed we have it. Every letter of the Hebrew alphabet beside carrying a number value, also has attached to it a symbolic monograph. B is Beth and means house. G is Gimel and means camel. D is Daleth and means door. H is He and means window. He and means window, etc. When we come to M, we find it is named Mem and means water. N is called Nun and means that which is the animal life in water, fish. This is in the Hebrew, but amazingly, when we turn to the Old Egyptian, we find that N has the name of Nun likewise, but means and is the hieroglyph of water. Its character letter is simply a short line indented to indicate 7 waves, as our English scripture, M, is a succession of 3 waves. M, therefore, in the Hebrew and in the English as well, marks the nadir of soul's descent into water, and N, at the same level and therefore also signifying water, or as fish, the organic life in water, marks the turning point for return, the Mount Sinai of evolution. Its reference is undoubtedly to this earth, which true symbolic insight discovers is itself and not any hill on its surface, the mount or hill of the Lord, on which God meets man in a cloud of fire, and on which all sermons are preached by his inner deity to man, and all temptations, crucifixions, spiritual initiations, and final transfigurations take place. From A, the point of emanation of the spiritual fire, the creative stream of living energy, the river of vivification, as the Greeks call it, proceeded and swept downward until at M it had immersed its fiery potencies in the water of the human body, therein to begin to do its evolutionary work of kindling its own bright flame of spiritual consciousness in the Red Sea of the human blood. And now it is known that this red blood was originally seawater. As fire causes water to evaporate, the ancient allegorism represented the divine fire as drying up the water of the bodily sea, permitting souls to pass over the watery terrain dry-shod. Variant symbolism had the Christ nature walking on water without sinking into its depths. Egyptian figurism had the fire causing the water to boil, with the soul subjected to the danger of being scalded thereby. So the graph of the soul's descent and return swings down from the fire height of AB to MN, and there turns back upward to end in the final letter. It may be a chance circumstance, but is at any rate an odd one, that if we start with A and then take in succession the final letter of the English alphabet Z, the final one of Greek O, and the final of the Hebrew TH, it gives us the word Azoth, the word used in medieval alchemy to denote the primogenetic source essence of life. If it were thus made up of the first and last letters of the 3 most representative alphabets, it would have been intended to denote that basic essence which constitutes the substance of all life from the first step in creation through to the final dissolution of all things. In descending from the height of fire essence to the depth of water substance, the energization would have had to pass through the intermediate stage or form of air. Fire symbolizes pure energy of spirit, air typifies mind, water stands for emotion, as earth for sensation in the scale of conscious states. If any of the letters between A and M are intended to mark the air stage, it has not come to knowledge as yet, unless it be that the bent form of the 10th letter, YOD or Yod, indicating the candle flame, bent by a puff of air to denote the original impulse of God's mind on the flame, is to be taken in this significance. M and N, separate or conjoined, form the framework of hundreds of words relating to the condition of spirit energy when immersed in matter. As the primal mind fire is the father, A and B, AB, so the primal matter essence is the eternal mother, which in Hebrew is AM, AM, AM. M will be found to begin virtually all words denoting motherhood. M represents 3 or 5 or 7 waves of water, and it should not be a matter of surprise, therefore, that we find all life on the planet having its generation in and from the seawater. Seawater is, in a sense, still the mother of our life, because that life is sustained by the electrodynamic potencies in our blood, which is still chemically undistinguishable from seawater. Our blood is the red seawater, so we get the mother name by conjoining the letter of potential fiery energy A with matter, symbolized by water M. Our colloquial ma for mother is essentially the Hebrew Am. Starting with A, M for mother, there is met an almost endless list of words whose connotations link them to the matter side of the life duality. To view them in the light of this orientation of thought is to discern in them new and vivid intimations of esoteric meaning. These recondite connotations can best be seen by contrasting their sense with their antonyms denoting fire, spirit, and the fatherhood. To begin with, the creative powers symbolized by the letters at the head of the alphabet are gods, while the being who embodies God power in matter is M-A-N, man. The divine powers at the summit are unmanifest. In matter they become manifest. At the summit there is but one power, undifferentiated. Below in matter it has multiplied itself and become the many. At the God height the power is purely spiritual. At the lower level it comes as menial. Oh my goodness. Phew. The divine power. This is tough when you turn the pages wrong accidentally. The divine powers at the summit are unmanifest. In matter they become manifest. At the summit there is but one power, undifferentiated. Below in matter it has multiplied itself and become the many. At the God height the power is purely spiritual. At the lower level it comes out as mental. Spirit above, mind below. He's capitalizing the M and the M here. At the top there is the maximum of power, even though purely potential. At the lower range it is minus, or at a minimum, though actual in its limited expression. A man is the cosmos in miniature. That which is expressed down here in comparison with the superior potential above, mean. Also, as here, the two poles of being are locked into a more or less stable equilibrium. Things here are at a mean or median counterbalance. To hold this steady is to maintain life in its right poise. The father power, AB, is the conscious cognitive element in creation. The power it wields in matter, the MN energy of the atom, is the manipulative hand of God, the meaning of yod, and so it is that the word for hand in many languages is not only compounded of m and n, Latin manus, Spanish mano, French main, but is in all languages feminine in gender, intimating the motherhood. In contrast to heaven above, the earth below is in Latin mundus, from which is our adjective mundane. Also from this comes mount, mountain, mound, already explained as referring to no hill on earth, but to the earth itself. Hebrew name for this lower vale of tribulation was Hinnom, or Gehinnom. In the upper realms, souls are not sufficiently individualized to deserve specific differentiated names. Here soul gets its proper name. The fate allotted to each soul by karmic desert comes out to manifestation here below. It is therefore the soul's nemesis. The soul here is under law, in Greek nomos. A section of the terrain of a nation was by the Egyptians termed a nome. Nomi. Nomi. Since matter, like type symbol, water, is from the philosophical view of reality nothing, it was designated by the Greeks privation, the Egyptian base root of the letter N, whose hieroglyph was 7 waves of water, along with the primal deific trinity Nu, Nun, Nut, gives us all the words expressing negation: no, not, neither, nor, none, nil, nix, German nit, nicht, Latin nox, night, our night, deny, neuter, never, nay, German nine, nimals, etc., etc., applied to man. His relative nothingness would make him no one, which is in Latin nemo. As man is cut off from deity here below, he is in Greek monos, alone. Also he is a monad. Perhaps monk is one who is alone, not united to the female counterpart. The food the soul eats on earth is that divine manna that was rained down from heaven, but had to be scraped up off the earth, the perfect analog of how mortals acquire their heavenly nutriment. The universal ancient tribal name for the divinity manifesting in the life of nature was Manu, Manitou. Then we have the word for the thinking principle, which in the Hindu system is Manas. One caught under the demonic possession of this power was a maniac. In India, the practice of prophecy was called mantric science, and the man in the word demon, the mon in the word demon, is probably of this derivation. The Greek Furies were called maenads. Plato refers to divine obsession as a mania, better than sober reason. And omen was a foresight of one's earthly fate, and the mystifying and baffling word ending in prayers, Amen, if not directly from the Egyptian god of that same name, would seem by letter imitation to mean so let it be, indicating that what is set forth should come to reality in the evolutionary process measured by the descent of soul into matter the whole way from A to Mn. Memory in Latin is memini, and the Greek muse of memory was mnemosyne. Johnny Mnemonic. To recall one's past is to reminisce. Things here are the miniature, or the minutia, of what is whole and integral above. They are minute in magnitude and last but a minute of time, poetically speaking. Another most important line of derivatives branches off into sidereal regions. The great cosmic symbol, if not the embodiment of divine energy, is the sun. In contrast with its mighty generative power, its opposite character in the earthly region of the heavens, dead, inert, purely passive, and reflective, the symbol of matter is the moon. Hence, the composition of its name in English from N and N, M and N, giving also month, Monday, and mensis. If in Latin L stands for the divine light, there luna, the moon, might have taken form from the idea that on the lunar orb the divine light L was weakened and dimmed by the reflection from the surface of the negative lifeless moon, giving them luna, L for the light and N for the darkness. Or it might have been originally L reflected in M, N, suggesting lumna, later wearing down into luna. Oddly enough, the Latin for light in its pure solar glory is lux, L-U-X. But for light in its earthly refracted, dimmed form, the word was lumen. At any rate, L and N are set directly at opposite modes to each other in lux, light, and nox, Greek nux, night. L evidently here carries the connotation of divine character analyzed earlier. For not only does the Latin have lumen, or illumin for light, but it has the word representing the divine light or power in things, numen, where we get numinous, which comes close to bearing the same significance as nomen, Latin for name. The soul was thought to put on its bodily vesture as a mantle, which, as being the house it lived in, was its manse, or mansion. That which trailed back from the horse's head was the mane. That which flowed forth from the head of being was the emanation of creative force. The divinity implanted in living nature was evolved in man. Most evolved in man was immanent, or Emmanuel. It is close to certainty that here is to be found an explanation of a prominent item in the grammar of language which seems still unknown in philosophical science, the reason why the accusative objective case of all Latin nouns, masculine and feminine, in the singular number ends in the letter M, and those corresponding in Greek end in N, as also in Sanskrit and doubtless other languages. It is obvious that the M and N endings here denote objectivity, as the accusative is the objective case. Why this is so is definitely implicit in the significance of the meaning structure which places the two letters ending in this case at the bottom of the descending arc of involution. For the divine light is emanated from the supernal kingdom of spirit, and spirit is the active, generative, productive force that energizes all life processes. It alone is self-generating. It alone initiates and institutes action. It is the father principle. The maternal, material principle is eternally only passive, receptive, mothering that which it receives germinally in its womb. The spirit force must stand as the actor. It does whatever is done. It moves upon the inert water, stirs them into agitation and motion to throw them into the forms of the conceived pattern. It is therefore the subject of the sentence that tells what its action initiates in the creative order. It is therefore, in the nominative case, the subject actor in the movement, and is grammatically called nominative because it gives specific character and name, Latin nomen, to that which the action creates. But what of the end product that the action brings into the status of being? As end product, materially created, it stands there as the object of the action, the thing proposed, and by an energizing process made objective as the result. It is therefore the objective in view of the initial action and the objective thing produced. It must therefore be put into the objective case in grammar. The actor works subjectively, in the purely noumenal or subjective realm of conscious being. But its work is to bring its purposes thus subjectively conceived out into objective reality. Hence the creative subject force that emanates out of the A-B condition of primal being ends by generating its product here below at the MN station of physical objectivity. The MN terminations, even this word has the two letters in its context, therefore fitly appertain to the objective case of nouns, and the Latin, Greek, Sanskrit, and others so have it. To illustrate the point, the nominative case of trumpet in Latin is tuba, but the objective case is tubam. So all nouns. Only in the case of neuter nouns is there no distinction between the nominative and the accusative cases, obviously because a noun of neuter gender cannot manifest any difference between subjective and objective status. It is not living, therefore, can neither initiate action or be acted upon by its own volition, hence can neither subject nor object in the living sense, can be neither subject nor object in the living sense. The spiritually noumenal world is the realm where the subject principle initiates action. The lower physical world is the place where that action results terminally in the production of objectivity. M and N seem thus always to designate objectivity, and that again must be the reason for the composition of that English suffix denoting a thing's attainment or achievement of its status of being in objectivity meant. The principle of explanation thus established is seen with startling definiteness in three of our common English personal pronouns. Of the first personal pronoun, the nominative case is I, but the objective introduces the M, me. The third personal pronoun, masculine, singular, is in the nominative he, but in the objective it is him, he and him. The third person plural nominative is they, but the objective is them. It is in passing to be noticed that the I is the only one of the pronouns capitalized in respect to divinity, since the I ego is the only part of us that is divine. Likewise, the survival of the dot above the I and the J is the remnant of the Yod, the Hebrew divine flame. All this induces us to think that the I element and another word incidentally showing the LMN sequence of a person is the subjective divine self within, initiating all action, while the outer personal, physical bodily self is what this I has produced as the me. It might be said that the I has objectified itself in and as the me. What the noumenal I came to be when manifested outwardly in matter is the me. The I revealed itself in the me, just as it is said in religion that God has revealed or manifested himself to the world and in the world as Jesus. The ancients personalized a goddess named Echo. She represented the physical material repercussion to the impact of the waves of creative noumenal energy, the voice of God upon matter. What matter, so to say, responded or answered was the echo of the divine voice. There is aptness and beauty in these ancient conceptions, and ingenious allegorizations and poetizations once their sane high relevance is captured. The me is the echo from the side of matter of the divine voice of the I ego. The M is conspicuously seen as marking the point of lowest descent and beginning of return in a notable keyword in Hebrew. The word for sun holds as high a place of glory in religious philosophy as does the radiant orb itself in the solar system. It typifies for mental illumination the same generative ray of power that its physical beams represent in the stellar cosmos. The Hebrew word for it was obviously aimed at embodying the story of its nature and its daily course of apparent travel. In outward semblance, it appears as a globe of fiery essence that plunges at every eventide down into earth or water, crosses a land of darkness, and arises again, unquenched, in fiery splendor the following morning. As the globe of fire, its nature would be expressed most fittingly by the letter Shin, or SH, with its threefold candle flame, the three yods above. The place of water into which it nightly descends would be indicated by M, and the place of its final return, the Empyrean above, by SH again. So the word thus constituted would turn out to be SHMSH, Shemesh, and this is just what it is. It is the old basic story of the divine fire plunging down into water, the universal trope figure under which all operation of spirit in and upon matter was dramatized. It seems unquestioned that the scriptural names of Samson, Saul, Samuel, Samael, Simon, Solomon were based on this Shemesh stem, for all the divine figures in ancient spiritual dramas were essentially the sun god characters, typifying the spiritual aspect of the solar effluence in man. Samson's loss of power through the betrayal of Delilah fairly closely parallels Jesus' loss of life and his helplessness on the cross through his betrayal by Judas. Jesus, like Samson, was shorn of his aureole of glory, which was replaced by the black crown of thorns. As Samson's loss of hair, always typical of solar rays, reduced him to impotency. And the etymology of Delilah is most significant as fulfilling her part in the allegory. In the case of Jesus' crucifixion, darkness was over the earth during the agony. The name Delilah is compounded of the Hebrew word for night, Lila, Layla, with the fourth Hebrew letter D prefixed. Now the tribe of Dan was in astrological tropism, allocated to the autumn sign of Scorpio, when the sun is entering the winter time of darkness and solar feebleness. So Scorpio is called the gate or door of the dark underworld, which in the Egyptian was named the Tuat, now tending to be spelled also with a D as Duat, or Duad. When we turn to the Hebrew alphabet and see that D, Daleth, means door, we have the name Delilah, reading definitely the door of the dark underworld of night, unquote. This may seem far-fetched to those not habituated to the nature of ancient allegorical composition of spiritual myths. When the name of a paramour of a sun god figure works out to mean the door of the dark night, unquote, quote-unquote, door of the dark night of incarnation, the fitness of the construction is most astonishingly convincing and clearly reflects a designed conception. When one encounters and unravels not only one or two chance constructions of this kind, but scores of them, indeed finds them at every turn, one is certain that the methodology of ancient cryptic writing has been rediscovered. When this disclosure is carried through to the farthest limit of its bearings on the significance of the ancient literature, it is recognized with astonishment that the meaning content of archaic writing was expressed as definitely by the form structure of the material as by the connotation of the words. It is becoming more clearly discerned that the formulators of the sacred scripts of antiquity strove to dramatize a postulated form of cosmic structure in a graph outlining the life, development, and movement by imitating its rhythms and number counts, its cyclical swirls and sweeps, in the organic form of the textual construction. Thus it is seen that the numerical basis of Bible writing in Old Testament Hebrew and New Testament Greek is the quote-unquote magic number 7, the number value of thousands of verses, divine names, key phrases, and even whole Bible books is with surprising regularity a multiple of 7. Thus there are 7 other combinations in the verse score multiples of 7. Life, so to say, in every one of its creative advances travels in 7-league boots, dances to 7-beat measure, runs a scale of 7 notes. It is evident that the authors of Holy Writ labored to inweave the form of this movement into the writing itself. The lilt and pause is to reproduce in mantric value the lilt and swing of evolution itself. That this methodology has lain under the eye of scholarship for these 20 centuries or more without its implications being seen or guessed is unimpeachable testimony to the blindness of religious obsession. Another most significant combination of the divine SH with the earthly MN comes to view in the Hebrew word for oil, which is shemen. Here the fire symbol SH is united with both the water letters as the fuel for fire and the substance used in the divine anointing, which is itself the dramatization of the divinizing of man. Oil is one of the most frequent symbols of the deific power in the scriptures and mythology. The great divine names Christ and Messiah both mean the anointed one. It was observed earlier that when the X symbol of the developing movement of creation was lifted out of the matter symbol of O and placed after it, we strangely found that it spelled the word ox, O-X. This singular circumstance at once bred the conviction that this word, this hieroglyph, this theriograph, or animal hieroglyph, should play some prominent part in the scheme of ancient figurative representation of values and relations. It was, of course, known to be a figure in a number of biblical stereotypes as well as in Greek and other mythic scores, but its full symbolic import was not realized until the significance of its connotation with the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet came to view with startling impact. Aleph, A, has for its name coefficient this very word, ox. Along with this, there is also the Hebrew letter L, lamed, with the meaning of ox goad. But why is A denominated by the ox symbol? What is the significance of this animal that connects it with the first letter? Revelation of this profound and recondite symbolism should indeed open the eyes of all scriptural exegetists to the almost impenetrable crypticism of ancient esoteric writing, which they have with such obdurate intransigence continued to deny, ignore, and scorn. To put it in the most compact form of statement, it appears that A was denominated the ox, because as the animal is unproductive, incapable of begetting life as the result of desexing, so the primal state or stage of creation represented by the letter A is unproductive, incapable of begetting life. The alphabet's first character fittingly represents the no, not, nothing stage of the cyclical creation. It is the pre-zoic stage, the lingering darkness before the first rays of dawn. As yet there is nothing, neither matter nor movement. It is the absolute zero on life's or the cycle's thermometer. It is the state which the Egyptians described by their name Nu, none, nut, night, and the Hebrews by their Ain. It is the stage when naught was. It is nothing could be produced. In it nothing could be produced. Nothing could have birth. It was the great darkness, the great deep, into whose bosom had not yet fallen the seminal seed of new creation. It was sheer potential of life standing, like the ox, unfertilized, unimpregnated by the fructifying ray of cosmic mind, impotent to mother life until so enriched. If this seems like an arbitrary fancy, it also appears to be indubitably substantiated by the positive fact that in the main languages from Sanskrit down to English, this letter A is the universal prefix which gives to all words with which it is conjoined the negative meaning. It can be translated invariably by the word not. In Greek it is called alpha privative, the letter that deprives a word of its positive meaning, making it negative. Atheist, agnostic or agnostic, asymmetrical, amoral, amnesia, apathetic, apathetic, atom, atom, not cuttable, atom, the atom. Even the Greek word for truth, aletheo, that which is not forgotten, and a host of others attest the negative force of A. This being so, we are introduced directly to another outstanding fact in connection with the succeeding letter. The second of the alphabet, B. It is not by chance or as a pure pun that begins with B. For in the structured formation of the alphabet, since the creation does not begin with a pre-creation stage, the ancient books definitely state that it starts with B, begins, as it were. B is therefore the first letter in the actual creation. How fitting is it then that it is the first letter of the first verse of Genesis, which starts with the Hebrew word brashith, and that followed by the verb bara. Brashith means in the beginning, and bara means created. Yes, creation begins with B, not agins, with A. As the beginning institutes the process of coming to be, or becoming, these words also start with B. The great number of German words with the prefix B, as bekommen, bekennen, bedenken, and a very large number also in English as beget, betoken, bespeak, besmirch, behave, and befriend, all carry the meaning of a movement coming, so to say, to a becoming. And in what way could the whole process of creation be more graphically expressed than by saying that it is a movement in its way to becoming, to be? As the great Hindu philosopher Aurobindo expresses it, quote, the only being is becoming, unquote. Can it be without significance, then, that the Hebrew word meaning to come is just the B leading out the A? B-A, ba, and this also spells the Egyptian word meaning the soul, the ba, that comes to being here in the body. And would it be sheer coincidence that our born, bare, birth, breed, baby, beget, all start with B, and that as well as spring, and that as well or spring in the Hebrew is Beer, Beer Sheba, the well of the seven. We cry, Abba, Abba, Father, says the scripture, which if Ab is Father and Ba means comes, would have us saying the Father comes in the character of his Christly Son on earth, the ray of us, of the Father principle in the universe, the ray in us of the Father principle in the universe. And that's the end of page 32. Page 33. I'm going for as long as the clock allows. Hopefully I can get all 43 pages done, but it's not looking like it. Ooh. I'm feeling a little lightheaded. I think I've been looking at the screen too long. It may be asked why, since the 10th letter Yod represents the flame of the divine creative fire, and indeed gives its name to God, the Shin or S or SH has come in for so much of the divine fire symbolism. Our answer cannot be categorical or dogmatic. It can be speculated that as the Yod represented the flame in the primal oneness, the Shin represented it when it had differentiated into triplicity, for it contains 3 Yods. It does not seem a wild assumption to think also that the letter chosen to carry the hissing sound